Hi, Karen Burchill here, and it's been about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks since I put up my first 4 videos on my series Extensive Inktense, and I'm getting ready to do maybe a couple different ones together, or I might stitch them all together, using my Inktense blocks, which I have right here. My question, and I don't have the answer to some of these things. I'm just going to zoom out. When will I learn? I have a question of how the Inktense blocks will work on different products that we tend to use within mixed media. So I prepared some sheets ahead. So we are going to, in this video or this one and the next one, apply Inktense blocks in maybe a couple different ways on each different surface. So we have white gesso, black gesso, plain paper, manila tag, putting it on photo paper, deli paper, watercolor paper, drywall tape, on pouring medium, and then putting it in pouring medium, on gel medium, something that's been stenciled with gel medium, or if you've sealed your product with gel medium, or putting it right into gel medium, over Mod Podge, over a book page and just a book paper, using it on lace, craft paint. I have some Ceram Coat. I also have some Liquid X Basic, so we're going to see if we can how it takes the color on top of that. Over modeling paste that's already been applied, trying to put it into modeling paste. What do we get? Putting it onto paper towels and then using that for crafting, coffee filters, and on magazine paper. So I think I have my work cut out for me, and I'm just going to reiterate that in some of these cases I have not done this at all, so I do not know how it will work. Now this is one that I have done. This is putting it onto these are just plain cards that had been gessoed, white gessoed, and then just dipped in there. So we're just going to have some fun, get out the blocks, and see where it takes us. So I have my silicone mat here. So we can take our Inktense blocks and we can apply it directly onto a gessoed surface. And this is one of the ways that I have found that I really like it. And you'll notice that, oh, come on, come on, come on, that it picks up the texture. Come on. It picks up the texture of whatever. So if you put more or less texture in it. So I just often put this on dry onto the surface, and much the way you see people applying gelatos onto either gessoed or a non-gessoed surface. So then what I would do is just give it a light spritz and mix with my finger. Sometimes, you know, having a baby wipe handy. And you can mix and blend however you see fit in there. So you can get whatever effect that you want. So on this side, what you can also do is you can just put the water on first and do it that way. And I find, you know, there's a slight difference between the two. I don't know if it's enough difference to matter, but this is one of my favorite ways of creating backgrounds on my ATCs after I gesso, because I tend to gesso everything, you know, and then just heat drying it. One of the things that I had done one time, you can even take and put some stencils or on top of the surface and use that and stamp in there. You can also wet it down and you paint it on with a brush if you like. Now this, you can't quite see the texture. I tried to put some texture in here with the gesso. Now the paper I'm using isn't even mixed media paper, so some of the, you can see where it kind of falls into the grooves and crannies, and you can move it around. Whoops. If I can show you. You can get some flow, and so you can move the paper and get some motion and movement with the Inktense. So that is how I got on here, and I will do some on the cards in the technique portion coming. I just wanted to show you how I applied it and how it reacts on different surfaces. So I have some I just bought some black gesso sale. This is a Demco brand. I have no idea. That might mean something. It's an artist series. It's very smooth. And so I thought, well, you know what? Because I like the idea of doing black. I've never done this, so I don't know how different colors would work on this. If you get much vibrancy at all. I also wanted to, let me see. Try to apply it through a stencil on here using, I have it on my silicone mat like I did in there, and using a sponge. It's not very dark. I don't know if I could get it to do anything. You know, you get a very, very light depending on the colors you use. So black gesso, you know, I think there's probably better products that will go onto the black gesso. Good to know. On to plain paper, and this is totally untreated. It's, you know, again, you can just draw on it. So if you wanted to, I am not an artist. I do not draw. You could do that. You can, you know, use a paintbrush and just specifically draw or paint what you want. Now, again, if I was going to draw, I probably wouldn't use my blocks. I would use my Inktense pencils. You know, so you can wet it. And instead of the finger, so you have a little more control of the water, just go in like that. One other way applying it, a lot of the time when I first started, I would just do this and I'd paint it on. I find the color gets way more vibrant if you have the gessoed page. I really prefer putting it onto gesso, but you can put it on just the plain one. Now the next question I had is putting it on a manila tag, and this actually is a tag I got from my sister-in-law, and I have a stamped message. So, you know, if I wanted to, and this is non-gessoed, so I think I'm just going to color it colors that I like, that I want. And you know, you can play if you know your color theory, which I really do not. You know, I'm kind of learning. I learn by doing, so I get in there and I discover, oh, and then someone says, oh, there goes another one. They do break, you know. And for something that's non-gessoed, I think I would prefer using a brush. And again, different colors. I don't want to necessarily create mud. Now, I don't necessarily like where you can see the scratch marks on there. So I would tend to just take it off of here. When it's on gessoed material, it doesn't seem to work. I don't seem to see the marks. They meld a lot better, but I would just do it like this. I would apply, just rubbing it in and doing it this way, and then getting the depth of color that I want. So, you know, and you can let it dry, heat dry it, you know, and continue adding layers as you see fit. Now you might notice they get like this, but it's a pretty easy wipe off. I really don't worry too much about that. So, and again, I'm going quickly for the camera. I'm not really, you know, trying to create a work of art. You know, if you see some of my ATC videos and some of the technique videos that I'm going to make, then it's going to look a little bit more thought out. This is just an idea. You know, rubbing too much more on a non-gessoed tag, you know, it covers, the colors are pretty vibrant, and works along that line. So, you know, for my money on this, I would go on the gessoed paper, drawing on first and then mixing it with my finger or a makeup sponge, you know, putting it on a tag. I like the color. One other thing I'd like to try here is just, and I knew this was going to be a problem. I'm just going to put some color onto here. This is something that I like doing with my Inktense. Got some colors, just the back of this card, and just, you know, like they do with, you know, wetting out the distress inks, or with alcohol inks, or, you know, different kind of things. So you can totally do the same effect, and I kind of love that. You know, you can dry it. Again, I find, for my money, for my what I like, the looks I like the something that's done on a gesso surface. I find it just goes on smoother and the colors are more vivid and bright. So just another idea. Which brings us to photo paper. Now, photo paper, I was just playing around with photo paper because I had gotten some acrylic or alcohol inks. So this is one that I did with my Inktense. Again, putting it on the silicone mat, much like I just did with the tag, for the sake of speed and compactness of my video, because nobody wants to watch a video. And then I just have some photo paper that's I'm just dipping it in there. And then you can cut this, you can stamp a message on there. It's just a different look, texture. Than you would get otherwise. So then I would stamp something on there, and that might go on a you know, as an embellishment of some sort and type on there. So, you know, it's very, very simple. Just, you know, you're just dragging and you're playing till you, whoops, we got some yellow in there, so we got mud. You know, you're playing till you get something that you like. You know, you can cut out a flower out of that. You know, and you get some interesting textures there where it comes up. And if you dry it right away, those lines will stay. Ouch. Heat gun. Who knew? Heat. You could apply it directly onto the photo paper, but this is my preferred way because you get that very, very different, you get those lines and those interesting bits. So that's photo paper. Now, next we have, and there goes a block down to the floor, which I do not want to step on. Applying it to deli paper. So again, I think, you know, if I was using deli paper as making some embellishments for some collage things, again, you could paint directly onto this, or, you know, mopping up from at the end of making something, you know, and you can just put layers upon layers upon layers on this, and it's all, you know. So let's try putting it directly onto the deli paper. Another piece right here. So if we just did this, you can, from Derwent, you can buy grippers, but I mean, I can't. Okay, I'm back. The video cut off. It always does for whatever reason. I haven't found that setting yet. So I'm applying directly to deli paper here with my Inktense blocks. And I was just saying that you can buy grippers from Derwent, but I can't see myself putting them on and off all the time. So, and because the deli paper, you know, it will have to be dried or whatever, I would just use a brush, and you get, you know, it has kind of that little bit of waxy surface, so, you know, that's part of what you're gonna like, you know, and just play. And, you know, you can also use a baby wipe to wet it, and you kind of get rid of some of the lines, and you get a more coverage. So again, if that works for deli paper, you can use the baby wipe on the back. This is just manila tag, so instead of wetting it with my finger or wetting it with a brush, I can just do that with a wet baby wipe, just like you do gelatos. You know, none of these techniques or ideas are mine uniquely. I've watched videos with different products, and I said, why can't I use it with these? You know, because we don't all have the money to buy everything, even if we, and some of us, you know, may not want to, even if we could. So with this, and it dries pretty quick. So the baby wipe on paper is actually a preferred way of blending it. It's not creamy like the gelatos. It is a different product, but some of the same things you can do. So now I have on watercolor paper. So when they made it, they were using Inktense blocks on watercolor paper. And I did realize that when it is on watercolor paper, it does, you know. So again, my preferred way of doing it on watercolor paper. You can draw on it, but if I was going to draw, I would use my Inktense pencils. And you can draw, and that's not my forte. So I would just, again, dab it. And these would probably just lie in my case, and I would just use it kind of as a palette. You know, and with watercolor, you can spray it ahead of time and just, you know, just touch it, and where the water is, that's where it's going to go. So you can get, I don't know if you can see what's happening here. It's just like, as soon as you touch it, the color goes wherever the water is. So you can paint directly like this, you know, or you can do do it like that. The other way I've kind of done with my watercolor paper, and this is just 90-pound watercolor paper, is mix it in a palette, in a palette. Now this is a ceramic palette. You could use the plastic ones, and I have those from my folk art days, but I did buy some of these because the inks and the dyes don't stain. So you can do this and basically make a pool of water. And I like the spray bottles, and because you are in control of the color. And I like doing wet on paper color paper, and you can just see it dance. And you know, with watercolor you kind of give up the, I did find that anything that was done on watercolor paper is actually permanent. I was saying that a lot of times I find when I make it into my sprays, it doesn't stay permanent. In the case of with watercolor paper, it does. So maybe it soaks into the paper and it get a different effect. And I can just drop it in, you know, and making a background, or I can use that for letters or card making or whatever you're doing, you know. And gravity, because it's liquid, you can always, you know, get the gravity going. You can dry. It takes some time for it to go. A little more water. Right, and watercolor paper is more used to, you know, it's going to take the water more. Now I have some 140-pound watercolor paper, so I just thought, for comparison's sake, I find when I'm doing actual watercolor painting, it does make a difference. So again, I'm not using my good watercolor brushes here at all. I just love how it just dances, and it's so effortless. And you know, or you can paint, and you can mix the colors. Again, this is my preferred way on watercolor paper. Mix the colors, go from stick to stick, and get the color design you like. So it does make a difference. With the heavier watercolor, you do get that different kind of texture behind it than you do on that one. So again, it depends what you're looking for and what you're wanting. You can get the very faint watercolor colorish look, or you can go for the more opaque look. The other one I have here is just drywall tape, because I like to use drywall tape on there, and I just wondered how well it takes to the Inktense Blocks. So I'm having trouble today with this, and I'm just applying it directly on, you know, and it's going on very smooth. Again, never done this, just it was a matter of questioning. You know, so we get kind of a different pattern, which I kind of like. So I might put that on a page and get that pattern so it looks like it's coming through or not coming through. I just have a question about whether some of my blocks are wet, so because I've been, and if I use this just with a baby wipe, what am I going to get? Okay, so it's going to be more. So we get some different kind of effects there. So that's photo paper and watercolor paper. So the next one I have here, I have my pouring medium. And this was a mistake buy, but something I've learned to use. So I want to know, because sometimes I seal it and then it's like the color isn't quite what I want. Can I go back in and color it with it? So I'm going to try, you know, there's pouring medium on this side of the paper. There isn't there. You can kind of see a little bit in the shine. It's very, very faint. You know, and it's bubbling up. Now how about if we wet it a little bit? Now we get much more vivid color. But if I wanted to outline something, I definitely could use it on top. My guess is that it would be very easily reactivated. And it dries. When this dries, it is not it is not glossy at all. It's very, very matte. So, you know, if that's what you like, you know, so if you were to underline or highlight some things after the fact that you've used pouring medium on. Now, one of the things that I thought of, which we're getting into with the gel medium and the pouring medium, is what happens if I apply